Mr Speaker, the Palaszczuk, Miles, tired 10-year-old Labor government has failed Queenslanders and it has failed my community of Clayfield. For almost a decade now, Labor has systematically watered down the laws, and this has led to a generation of young offenders who believe they are untouchable. And at the same time, this Labor government has failed when it comes to rehabilitation, and it started with the failed policies that were introduced in 2016 by the now Attorney-General, the then Attorney-General. The Palaszczuk Miles governments have, and let's list them, legislated detention as a last resort for the shortest and most appropriate period. They abolished breach of bail. They legislated restrictions on publishing identifying particulars of young people in the youth justice system. They reinstated sentence review. They abolished the sentencing option of boot camps. They made childhood findings of guilt for which no conviction was recorded inadmissible in court when sentencing for adult offences. They closed the Children's Magistrates Court when hearing all youth justice matters. They changed the law to enable more young people to be granted bail, and they legislated that electronic tracking devices cannot be imposed on a child. They did all of that in the first 6 months of coming to office. So, Speaker, after this legislative feather bedding of young criminals, what does Queensland have to show for it? More victims and more crime in 53 of 55 police crime category data points. In my electorate of Clayfield, and despite the best efforts of our hard-working but short-staffed police, the statistics on car theft are sobering alone. And I noticed the minister didn't mention car thefts in Brisbane, the biggest area for car thefts. In a decade, car thefts in the Hendra division have gone from 392 in 2015-2016 to 712 in 2023-24. That is an almost doubling of the number of car thefts. People in Clayfield are worried and fearful. Not a week goes by that I don't receive emails and calls about cars being stolen and homes being broken into. Only on Monday, Mr Speaker, I received this email message. And I quote, "I am a retired Australian Army officer, having served nearly 22 years, including multiple deployments to East Timor, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria and Israel. I retired as a Lieutenant Colonel after completing my final appointment as a battalion commander. Upon my retirement, my wife and I made the decision to buy our forever home in Brisbane, and after a prolonged search settled on our 1940 Queenslander. We loved Hendra and absolutely loved the thought of raising our children in South East Queensland. However, after the events of the past few years, we no longer feel that way. Last Friday night, in what was the 8th occasion in recent years, we were targeted at home by a gang of criminals. The details are that at around 12:15 on Saturday morning, both were awake. The TV and inside and outside lights were on when my constituents saw someone trying to break in via the back glass sliding doors while they were awake. Because of his military experience, he got up and tried to chase the intruders away. The intruders jumped the fence into the neighbour's property to escape. As he gave chase to the front of his house, he was confronted by 2 carloads of criminals from the same gang. 3 men immediately alighted from one of the vehicles and began advancing towards him on foot, screaming obscenities like, "We're going to kill you, you see," and then yelling to each other, "Get the gun and grab the effing knives. Let's kill this person." Speaker, the drama went on.
I'll just take some advice. Member, even when you're quoting from material, I think it's clear that you're alluding to language that's unparliamentary. I'd ask you to withdraw.
I withdraw.
You have the call.
"We're going to kill you, you so-and-so." Speaker, the drama went on and ended with one of the cars being driven directly over the curb at my constituent and his neighbour, who only survived by leaping out of the way before the cars did 4 laps of the block, throwing bottles and cans as they sped past before driving off. Speaker, that's a terrifying story. A veteran who served his country, who fought terrorism and ended up as a Lieutenant Colonel. And here's the consequence, Mr Speaker, as bad as that story is. This is what he says. "This isn't supposed to be. My wife and I have worked hard all our lives. We've served and, in the case of my wife, continue to serve. And yet the Miles Palaszczuk Labor governments have abandoned citizens like us in favour of protecting the criminals who are tearing our communities apart. Last Friday was the straw for my family. I did not fight terror overseas to have my family subjected to terror in our own home. This state has gone mad and I cannot stay silent any longer. I've spoken to that constituent. He's selling his house and moving to New South Wales. So that's the real cross of this lazy, long-term Miles government's soft-on-crime attitudes. People are calling
Time's
for
expired.
it. Adult crime,
Time's
adult
expired,
time,
member.
consequences.
Time's expired.